Joining us now to discuss developments in South Africa's technology space is Stafford Massie, CEO and founder of Thumbzup, and one of the, well, I think we don't really have to go into more detail, do we, Gugu?
I think if you heard the beginning of the show, he would know.
He's a bit embarrassed. You can see he's blushing at the moment. But Stafford he's our go-to man when it comes to insights. And I remember it was probably 18 months ago. We were having conversation, you and I, with our friend Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
And you said to Michael Jordan at that time, banking's in trouble. And it didn't take him long to resign and go and do something else.
I don't think it's about that. I think Michael has branched into the technology space. So he's now on the board of Mixer, as my understanding, and he's spending a lot of time in Silicon Valley. If you take a look at his tweets, where he is in front of the Facebook campus taking pictures. So it's a natural extension as an executive at his age, having achieved what he's achieved, to branch into that. But if you take a step back, the comment around banking, yes, I think banks have an issue around death by 1,000 wounds. Everyone out there is going for the store of value. I think the notion of making money online as a business and generally as businesses out there, marketing is not sustainable. Everyone wants the store of value. If I own the store of value, I control. And banks have always had the store of value. They've got the bank account. If you take a look at Apple, is emerging, and Apple's got one of the largest stores of value. And the question that on everyone's mind is, will they extend that out? Today, you can buy things very easily with your iTunes account, as long as it exists in the Apple world. Now we're starting to see Apple branch it out, where if you're on third-party sites, you can buy off those third-party sites, utilizing the store value that exists in your iTunes account. Now this feels very transactional related. And I think banks have these over-the-top layers, which they call, the Googles, the Facebooks, building wallets, building transaction services. Then you've got people on the ground, like telecommunications companies. Telecommunications companies are going through a metamorphosis right now.
Or like an M-Pesa?
M-Pesa is one derivative, but I think phones becoming transaction platforms is an inevitability. And I think that will, telcos will be pressured around their business model because voice is dying. Even data is collapsing. The question is, what's the next big thing? And I think the next big thing is owning the store value and getting some transactional revenue.
But clearly, these are thoughts that you've shared with Michael Jordan, because where he's going, as you mentioned earlier with Mixit, they've also got a store of value there. It's a play, and right. I suppose there's a lot of skepticism around it. Before we move away from that, is Mixit a player? Is it likely to be?
I think from a South African context, their numbers are incredible. In terms of adoption, the current market share, but they've got huge challenges, because if you take a look at where the kids are moving, retention of those kids when they're on the Mixer platform, can you stay with them? They're going to Facebook, they're going to BBM, they're going to WhatsApps, and these are all the over-the-top layers. The problem that Mixer has is it doesn't own the silo. When you don't own the silo, you have very little control, and disintermediation is a very real thing. Think about it. Phones come bundled with things because Google stuff is in there. So Mixer, I think, is as powerful as the ability for third parties to embed themselves natively in the mobile operating systems. So when I switch my phone on, what does it ask me? If today you switch an Android phone on and it asks you for your Gmail address, and it's amazing what pops up. You've got Google Now, you've got Google Chat, you've got Gmail, automatically just uploads. So these over-the-top layers is a threat to them. And the question is, how do they retain the user? And I think, yes, transaction enablement inside of Mixit is one way that says, hey, if we own a store of value, if we own Mixit Moolah, a virtual currency, we can expand the average revenue per user, and the churn is much lower because we think we can get people to stay on the platform. But it's a challenge because payment has a virtual aspect to it, but it has a very physical aspect to it also. How do you get money out of the Mixit platform?
So Michael's got a lot on his hands.
But I think, I think kudos to Mixit. A great coup. I think
Paul Harris's friend.
Yeah, Paul Harris and Michael are close. I mean, from the R&B days, etc. But I do think that
and they both live in Stellenbosch.
Yes, but I do think
Mixit's in Stellenbosch. Oh, come on, you don't have to join the dots there. It's not really a coup.
True, but I think it's a great coup for Mixit. I think it's a great addition. And if I was going to pick anyone out of the financial services space to partner with me in any of my technology initiatives, it would be Michael Jordan. I mean, that corporate knowledge that he has, the ability that he has, his presence. And he's a very creative man. I know Michael personally. He's an incredible individual, very, 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 very creative, and he gets tech, and he's very passionate about tech. So with all that corporate knowledge, all that experience, understanding banking to that depth, the question is, can he translate that into value in Mixer? And I think Michael has huge assets individually. I mean, I approached him. When I found out about him resigning, I immediately wanted to offer him board positions on several of my technology startups.
Did he accept?
His mere presence. There's nothing to say
Let's
today.
put good friends
There's
on that
nothing
one,
to
hey?
say
Come on,
today.
Goods, you
Let's
got
put
a
good
real
friends on
tough
that
question. Yeah.
Hey? But just on that, coming back to Michael Jordan coming from a financial institution there, we always hear talk of convergence and where media houses will also come on board
Yes.
assisting out with telcos. Is that environment changing, and is it changing fast enough to keep up with the demand?
I think it's interesting where if you take a look at banking, financial services, and you take a look at technology plays in general, you'll find that in sub-Saharan Africa, it's the most advanced you find anywhere else in the world. And when you go to Australia, last week I was in Australia, I'm doing a deal with one of the biggest banks in Australia. And if you take a look at what banks do in Australia relative to what banks do and offer in South Africa, it's incredible how far ahead we are. FNB won the most innovative bank in the world award. And if you take a look at FNB, and I always say this, if you take a look at FNB and you take Vodacom, let's make an example, there's very little difference between the two companies. You can get everything from FNB that you can get from Vodacom, pretty much.
Almost.
Yeah, one distributes SIMs, the other one has a banking license. You can get an iPhone, an iPad from FNB. You can get a SIM inside of it. You can get a data package. They're taking all their assets in their network and saying, hey, we're going to leverage our ECNS license. So here's a bank that has a telco license. They're provisioning data packages with their banking services. The obvious consequence to that is people staying out of branches. Yes, retaining users. But I think it's interesting to see banking transforming itself and spilling into the telecommunications world, where you can literally get everything that you want from a bank that you can get at a telco. Now, telcos are looking at this and saying, wait a minute. It's inevitable that the phone will become the credit card that can make voice calls and do data. The phone is the transaction platform. We have a clash of civilizations on that device because Google builds the operating system, Samsung builds the phone physically, and we all hear about NFC, that we'll pay with our phones, we'll tap our phones on things, where the phone will store the store value, where we'll SMS currency. And it will be interesting to see the next 5 years how these two worlds converge. I think in the next 5 years, when you look at the South African banking and telco industry, I think you will see some mergers. I think you will see some acquisitions, and you'll see some big surprises. How could this happen? This doesn't make sense, that a bank and a telco are merging. Because I think it's so congruent. It makes so much sense.
So if you ran FNB, would you be buying Telkom?
I wouldn't be buying Telkom, but what I would be doing is looking actively at a telco license where I could provision out fully on not just an ECNS license, having a full telco license. Why not? Because these devices are simply mechanisms. You should take a look at a phone as a mobile bank branch. I mean, that's the way Michael did it. He was the forefront of that. He kept people out of branches by putting his branch and his presence and his business in a virtual state in your hands.
So banking as it used to be is in trouble. Banking as it is going to be in the future, perhaps not. Stafford?
Not at all in trouble.
As always, fantastic having you here. We look forward to seeing you more regularly in future.
Thanks, Alan.
And we'll stretch. He stretches our minds, doesn't he?
No, he does, hey? Natural thinking. Now we know why him and my MJ are friends.
Him and MJ. You just call him MJ.
MJ, of course.
That's what they call him, yeah.
MJ.
And like, look at the
call him
times.
doctor.
You're still in a bank branch, you see.
I'm a Dr. Jordan. That was Stafford Massie, the Chief Executive and the founder of Thumbzup.